Hey, welcome back, episode 10. Today I speak with Craig Lavin of South Florida. Craig does amazing guitar inlay work. Really beautiful stuff. Highly recommend you check out the Stu Mac video series he did a few years back, going through his entire process. I'll link that below, and I'll show a couple pictures here of his gorgeous work. Just really beautiful and interesting work. Enjoy the chat. Hey, Craig, how are you? Thanks for
Hey,
joining the club. Thanks for being here.
thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So you do some of the coolest work that I've seen, these guitar inlays. Tell me, how did you get started? It's quite a niche. How did you get started in doing inlays?
It was about 25 years ago or more, and I was on, the internet just came out. And I was looking, my wife to be was away at school while I was hanging out in her room, and she had her computer. So I was on her computer looking up guitar stuff because you couldn't before, right? It didn't exist. So I started looking
Yeah.
around and I saw that Taylor Guitars, of all the companies, had a run of three different kinds of marine life related guitars they came out with. And one of them is the one that you see now, which is the Taylor Swift one, the blue with the koi on it. You heard her play that? That's one of those
Yeah.
original 25-year-old Taylors. They didn't make that for her. That's a run they did called Jewels
Ah.
of the Sea, right? Something like that. And then they did one with gray whales, and they did one with sea turtles and jellyfish. And they CNC'd all those back in the day even. And I just went, wow, I gotta, get something like that. It just blew me away. I was studying
Yeah.
marine biology, have a degree in marine biology, and wanted something marine life on a guitar, which you never saw. It was vines. It was, typical stuff. And then here they come along
Yeah.
with sea life for the first time. So that's what got me into it.
Cool.
Yeah,
Did you play guitar at that time?
yeah. I've been playing guitar since I'm about 12. So
Okay. All right. Cool. I love how you found something within guitars that's a niche that you've been pursuing for so long. That's awesome. Do you have an art background? Like you
no,
draw all your stuff out?
yeah. I don't have
No.
a single art class. No, I just got into it, and I'm always trying to be better at drawing. I don't go on and use computer programs. I'll take photos of things. I'll trace here and there, but I
Yeah.
don't. I don't go and CNC design and do all that stuff with CAD and everything. And people do that. I don't have color shade programs that pick things. It's all by hand.
I don't think that's a lot as much fun as drawing it out. Like I don't think the CAD work is as enjoyable for some reason.
Well, you're sitting there. I mean, even if you're free to do it on your own, let's say that you're not with a company, you're an independent CAD guy. That could be awesome because you're still making your idea, right?
Yeah.
If you work with a company, then someone's going to take that picture you designed and go, "Oh, let's edit it this way," and then you're not doing your own thing anymore. So that kills it every little time it has to
Yeah.
be a meeting. It kills the idea. So that nobody wants that. But if you're independent, you're doing it, and you love connecting little dots all day long and making straight lines become curved lines. I don't enjoy it at all, but some people
Yeah.
do. They
Yeah.
see past that and see the other side.
So I think is there a new well yeah is there a new trend on inlay lately? I feel like I'm seeing more and more really intricate inlays, and I was thinking like I wonder what the history of inlays are on guitar, and I was thinking about those old country artists who had like their name inlaid on the fretboard. Is that kind of how inlay started in acoustic guitars?
Well, it's Inlay started as fret dots. Let's be honest, right? That's what you need.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
need something to mark a position so that people can know where they are when they're playing. So that is what drove the need to inlay something. Now that's not really art,
Yeah.
but that's what probably started it. And then someone comes along and says, "Hey, we can take this material and make it this shape, right? We can make a square." And then someone comes along and says, "Wait a minute, no, we can make a seahorse." And then all of a sudden you broke out into the art world a little bit. So that's the
Yeah.
history of
Yeah.
it. I mean, classic inlay is vines, things you see on Martins. Even overextendedly crazy things you see on Martins that are done by Larry Robinson, the true masters that are out there that are sometimes my work. That stuff's also being done by hand, a lot of it, and it's still traditional. It's vines, it's fountains, things of that nature. People have become conditioned to think they want that. That's the frustrating part. People come up to me and they
Yeah.
say, "Can you make me a torch?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can make you a torch, but why? Why do you want a torch? That's like the McDonald's
Yeah.
torch, the Inlay. It's everyone's got it. So I prefer that people think outside the box.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the sky's the limit. I think I think how I found you was because I started following this guy Joshua Young in Tennessee, who's making these gorgeous acoustics, right? And are you doing some work with him?
Yeah, it's funny, Josh. I just found Josh myself, not even about 3 months ago, and he was
Okay.
working with a CNC person who was not doing it full time, and it kind of dragged on, and he got just a little sick of waiting, so he came to me. He knew me, and because I've been around for a long time, he's this young kid who is somehow building cannons. At his age, just starting out, he's got 30 guitars, and he's got Brad Paisley saying, "I want one." He's really amazing. They're loud.
Yeah, that Brad Paisley video is cool.
Oh, he builds bluegrass canyons, and they sound amazing. And they really do sound different. Each one is incredibly distinct. Each time you hear, oh, I
Cool.
use this wood or that wood, is the build going to sound different? You can really hear it, even through cheap computer speakers or your phone speakers. That is a unique build. So I hooked up with him, and somehow we came up with the idea of doing those Tennessee wildlife fishes. He couldn't think of what he wanted, and he's out
Yeah.
in Tennessee, and I go to Tennessee every summer and camp and stuff and fly fishing and stuff like that. So he said, "Oh, well, why don't we do a wildlife of Tennessee thing?" And I said, "Well, let's do the fish because I like fish." So we just did the deer on the headstock, and then we did a pumpkin seed or a long ear sunfish, and then I did some shad and a bass. I had this green dyed veneer that I got. That's incredible. That looked like green. Green's real tough in Inlay to get, and to get one that looks like largemouth bass green is even harder.
Yeah.
Just colors are really challenging. So we did it, and then he brought that to the Tennessee show out there, the Amigos tennis show in Tennessee, and he carried it around and got everyone's attention in the world with it. They just loved the guitar. So, and then I did a bluegrass
Yeah.
one. I just talked about a name. I did a really complicated name for a client of his, and he loved it, and that's great. So me and Josh are doing some things.
Sweet.
He's booked out a year already, so I don't know when I'm working with him again.
Yeah.
We're always talking.
Yeah, there's a lot of buzz about him. I think we'll be hearing more about him soon as a builder. Yeah, the fish piece was really cool. I'll try to grab a picture of that for the intro here. I watched the Stu Mac series that you did a couple years ago on how to do the inlays. That was a really well done piece. I'll link that below for folks who are interested in learning more about that. But watching that, I had a few questions. First of all, what is that little router that you're using? And is that tube, is that the power cord that comes out of it? Is that a specialty, luthier router?
Okay, so if you get it from StuMac, you're getting the Fordham
Yeah.
router. A lot of beginners use Dremels, things like that, and that works.
Yeah.
The Fordham is more of a jewelry grade, high-end jeweler's grade, and a luthier
Okay.
grade because it has a foot pedal and you can control it and stuff like that. It's not horribly expensive, and it's really good. And the bits matter more than the actual Dremel. I usually go at it full throttle, and I don't slow down or speed up or worry about how fast it's going. I just kick my foot on the pedal and go. And unless it smokes out the wood, there's no reason to do it that way.
Yeah.
Use the StuMac downcut bits, and that helps. And I've got bits that go down to 0.02 millimeter that are just end mills that you can get. And I use those sometimes for maple and things that are really tricky to inlay with. But that helps. But you can use the Fordham, which is great, and there's different models of that. You can use the one with the StuMac base, like I'm using in the video, and that's what I use in my
Yeah.
shop. That's my actual. It's theirs, but I use the same exact one. I've got two
Yeah.
to jump between bit sizes.
I was noticing that it looks like depth control is crucial in what you're doing, making sure
Absolutely.
you can super accurately set the depth, and that looked like a really nice base on that.
It is, and the depth control is really important because a lot of these pearls have double color. If you're using mother of pearl, it's not that big of a deal. You don't want to ever get past like 20 thousandths as you're sanding. The idea is to inlay it as flush to the surface of the wood and still be above the wood. If you drop below the surface of the wood, you're
Oh,
causing
really? Yeah.
you got to pull it back out. You're going to have glue and dust and everything on top of it. Unless you're intentionally trying to have a layer above it. If you're doing epoxy, somebody wanted me to epoxy their mother's piece of jewelry once because she passed away, and I put that in the guitar. So you're building a window and building up with epoxy. That's the only time you're putting glue above an inlay, or if you're trying to tint it somehow by having a really thin layer, but that's really tricky. If you're just insetting
Yeah.
normal inlays, even the most complicated inlays that aren't involving any kind of special effect or anything weird, you're going to be probably working with 50 thousandths to 40 thousandths to 60 thousandths pearl, and you want to have it a little bit above the surface. And then you're using radius fretboards usually, right? 12, 16, 9 and a
Yeah.
half, depending on the guitar, and you got to compensate for that. So if you have really heavy radiuses, you've got to wrap the inlay sometime around the fretboard, and that makes it more complicated.
Yeah, I imagine that doing the inlay on the fretboard is way more difficult than doing it on a flat headstock.
Not way, but enough. If you're doing ukuleles, that's great because it's usually flat. Lately,
Yeah.
I'm wanting 16-inch radius ukuleles, and that's just like doing it on a guitar. But a big bass neck or a really high 7.5 Fender curve is real tough to work with. It's real hard. You're going to lose color somewhere.
And do you use that same bass on the router on the radius fretboards and just
Yeah,
kind
that
of
doesn't
just
change because your
managing
depth is going
the
to
radius?
move your router back and forth no matter what, and the depth's going to stay the same
Yeah,
as long as you're making contact with the wood. But what changes is how much pearl is getting sanded away at the sides as you go around. So
gotcha.
you're either hoping it doesn't break and trying to bend it a little bit, which is very, very risky, or you're cutting your design so that the edges are able to flex and is part a separate piece, right? So if you have two pieces on the side, one can do this versus be straight and try to force them both down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, is it possible to do it on an already built guitar? Like you'd have to take the frets off, right?
There are people that do it with the frets in, and you can do it with the frets in, but the amount of extra work sanding it properly and the amount of extra time is really abysmal. I don't like to do it. I think I've got one coming in
Yeah,
that's just getting dots replaced, and that's way easier. You can take a small little sander, tape off the frets, and not scratch them, and you can do it with that. But if you're doing full vines and stuff like that, and people have done it, and they have done it well because they're experts in the field. It's just a lot of work. Really what you do is take your
yeah,
router and route off the top. You don't even sand it. You try to route off the top as clean as possible, following the radius of your frets. And then you have to still sand down everything past all that, hogging off the top. And that's when it gets to be tedious. And you need you need your radius of your fretboard to be consistent the whole way through. So if you're able
yeah,
to level and re-radius the fretboard independently without frets in it, that's completely clean the way you would do it when you're building versus doing it afterwards, each little spot independently. If you're radiusing each little spot independently, the odds of that being completely even are very far off. There's no little mini radius block. You can make them, but you're still sanding
yeah,
24 different fret spaces. It's a ton of work.
yeah. When you're going to do that the dot marker replacement, are you just routing those out, the existing
Yeah,
markers
you can
out?
either find the right drill bit and just carefully punch them out, or you can go in with a router. I could do it either way, and then just replace it.
Yeah,
It's probably even safer to do it with a router for me because I can see where the edge is. If you get that neck, which is already curved on back, and don't have it stable, it might roll and then you might drill wrong. So there's a lot. You could way easier
yeah.
for me personally to go in with a little router and hog it out than it is to try to drill straight and pop them each out.
Now, I'm a woodworker myself. I've done some plunge routing and template routing. I make a lot of mistakes. Like sometimes the router will go a little sideways, and
Oh
I've got
yeah,
a
sometimes the
channel where I
wind
didn't
shoots
want to
out on
channel.
you. It's not always you.
Yeah. So how do you manage not making mistakes on somebody's guitar?
I'm perfect. No, I'm just kidding. you, you go in really stressed about it, and you say, "Oh crap, I got to do this today," and you sit there and you stop and you think about it, and you can be as confident as you want going in, but things happen, and they do happen. I have glued fretboards
Yeah.
to the table because I didn't remember that there was drilled out areas underneath for stabilizing it as they work on it. There's holes from the back sometimes. And sometimes the wood isn't as thick where that hole is, and it runs through. The CA glue is very fast. I've had that happen. After it's already been done, a fully finished piece, very very complicated, and now I can't get it off the table. That's happened. You don't tend to make huge mistakes if you do it every day. You know, you learn so much along the way that you go, okay, I can see this is coming. You know that if you're
Yeah.
holding something or if your phone's ringing, or so, you know that when the distraction happens, that's when you make a mistake. And when you're able to focus, it's not. So you just get yourself in that zone. But things happen. The main thing that happens the most times is that you're using multiple materials, and they're all pre-thicknessed by someone outside of your shop. You're buying pearl that's pre-done, and it looks kind of like this. Give me 1 minute here. You're getting samples. This is a laminate of brown lit pearl, and this is 60 thousandths thick. You might get one from a different company. It might not be 60 thousandths, even though they call it that. And you can sit there with your calipers all day long and measure these
Right.
things, and there's going to be variations. So the better you get, and the cleaner you work, and the more tighter your tolerances are, the bigger those errors show up. Because you're like, okay, I'm working at 50 and I'm working at this and I want to keep it all even. And then you go in and you see that, oops, this one was actually 40, or something got mixed up and something's dropped below. And that you have to go in and rip it out. And that's a big pain because depending on how complicated that fit was, ripping it out, so a big pain in the butt. And then you got to recut it and fit it in as tight as it did come out. And I've done that before plenty of times. But that's the main challenge is once you get to a certain level, the consistency of the thickness of all the materials is your biggest challenge. Routing in maple is a challenge that's really complicated. It's not complicated, it's just tedious. And your biggest way of dealing with that is drawing so that your router bit is going to be the smallest width that you're working in. And fine lines have to be dealt with a different way. But you design around what what's the word I'm looking for? You design around what the capacity or the capability of your tools is. Right, so if you know that you have routing that's extremely small, then you can draw extremely fine, right? Because you can still route that fine little thing. And then you got to hope it doesn't fall apart, because a lot of times bird's eye maple that ships out everywhere. Other kinds of maple are usually pretty hard, and then you have to deal with glue in maple. Maple sucks up everything and changes color, and that doesn't happen with the darker woods. So that's a pain in the butt. You have to use really cold glues that are really slow or something really thick. And then if you're using something really thick like an epoxy to glue it in, you got to be careful pressing it in because it'll put so much force up as you push it down that it could crack stuff. And if it's too tight, it could crack stuff. So it's hard. It's a hard art at times. And not at times it's easy, but at times it's really, really hard. Yeah, and really, really tedious.
I was going to say tedious is the word that came to mind for me. Patience was another word, but also super rewarding. Like I can imagine it's a super rewarding thing to work on and finish and see somebody's reaction when you hand them those beautiful pieces must be great.
It was in the beginning. And I don't mean it as it's not rewarding. I've been doing this for so long, but the most rewarding part isn't finishing it anymore. I know I have to finish them, and I know that, they have to be as good as I can make them. I can't do anything. You get to a certain point in your career, and people say, "Oh, that guy, right? Oh, Grit Laskin. Oh, this builder. Oh, that builder. Oh, Larry Robinson." They've got to be amazing, no matter because they hope and they expect that the money they're pouring into it is what this person's that they know they've been dreaming about is going to do. So they have to be amazing, every single one. And but what really is the most satisfying thing is when they go, "Oh my gosh, this is incredible," and I love it. That's when you've been done. When the builder gets it and says, "Yeah, it's radius properly, everything's great," and the guitar's finished, that's when you celebrate a little bit. And then when the client gets it and is floored, that's when you're happy. Those two things. Builder says it's great.
Yeah, I bet.
Client loves it. Then you're done. Making it, I've been making it for a long time.
So tell me a little bit more about your process because you're kind of doing art commissions, right? Someone's coming to you saying they want a piece on their guitar. For example, I saw you a few days ago working on a whale piece with a shark whale, I think.
Sure.
And you had like a process where you're looking at the model and then you go through the drawings. Tell me about that.
So I work with all these companies. I work with Inlay, who's fantastic. They're my biggest client right now, and we have an incredible relationship. They're one of the few large companies who still, I think, treats people in all realms as individuals. Each commission with them matters. whether it's somebody buying something that's under $1,000 or something that's over $1,000. So I work with them a lot, and they're incredible to work with. And every luthier that's out there that wants a job, somebody brand new can call me and say, hey, I heard about you. I got a guy that wants this, right? So that's what comes in. So, okay, so the one with Canalea. So Canalea has a client. They want whale sharks. They live in Mexico, and fish are my thing. You know, I love fish. I've been in marine biology all my life, and I haven't done whale sharks. So I was excited about it, and I knew exactly how I was going to do it. So the guy, we draw it up, and it goes back to Canalea, and they show the client, and the client says, yeah, this for the money, it's great. As far as this is important too, because as far as deposits and things go, that's a big part of the job, right? That's, you don't just get something for nothing. So the way I tend to do it is I say, what's your budget? Or I say, what's the client's budget? What's their max budget? And I draw to that. And that's been great for 27 or so years, because what happens is I don't upcharge if I go over. I know they want $1,000 piece. I know they want a $500 piece. And I'll draw and say, for $500, $1,000, I can do this. And they say, okay, that's great. I see the value in that, and I'll take it at that price. And then if it goes over, I eat it. If it's under, at times, which sometimes it has been, I'll charge them less. But it's way better to charge somebody less than it is to charge them more. It's not a car repair shop where all of a sudden they find something and oops, it's going to cost you another $500.
Yeah. No, you're more like a tattoo shop.
Yeah, but you can't really remove the tattoo that easy. You can't really remove the inlay easy either. You have to get a new fretboard, and that's actually the nice part of doing it all parts. You can get a new fretboard. I have not had to do a repeat fretboard more than once or twice, and the times I've had to do it, it was because companies have sent me the wrong parts. So that's been good. And like, oops, we gave you the wrong radius, or oops, we gave you the wrong scale, something like that. So okay, so you draw it up, and then you show that to the client. The client says, yeah, I like the drawing, or no, I don't want to do with that. Or can we add this? Can we change that? Can we move this thing that way? Edit. And then from there on, I tend to be pretty much about choosing materials myself. I'm very opinionated about the materials that I use. It's not healthy to have somebody sit there and say, I want to use this, I want to use that, I want to use this on a complicated inlay. On an inlay that's going to be over 100 pieces, it just drags out that job waiting for a response. Do you like this color?
Yeah.
It's not enjoyable at all, right? So, and that's not how it usually happens. You get to a certain point where people expect or know your work, and they say, well, Craig Lavin's doing it, well, so-and-so, whoever's doing it is doing it, and I love what they do, and, here's the deposit, we agreed on the art, go for it. And that's where I tend to...
Yeah, then it's your job, yeah.
Yeah, then it's your job. And, they know what the art's going to look like. The only thing they don't know is the colors. If they have favorite colors, yeah, you talk about it. If they have, I have to have pals somewhere. Okay, fine, we'll do that. But not, let me see the picture, I want this to be this. It doesn't work that way. You don't make the recipe as you cook.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Do you have a favorite material that you work with? Is it pearl?
No, I don't. I have some materials that I love. I like Kieranite, actually, is a material that I started working with years ago. And it's like a poly, gun grip material. You can use it for anything. It doesn't lose color as it thins out. I wish they made more colors. They make it in about maybe, 10, 15 different color types, maybe 20. It cuts real easy. It holds a shine. It's incredibly durable. And they make it in a pearl, they make it in a black, they make it in orange, they make a lava flow kind of thing. I like that a lot, and I use it more than anyone. And other companies have started using it since I've introduced them to it. You go to knife,
oh, cool.
You go to knife handle companies, you go to Knife Supply, and Knife Supply has custom poured, very expensive actually. None of it's cheap. It's people say, oh well, pearl's expensive. Well, that's synthetic. That should be cheaper. It's not, because someone's making that material by hand. They're custom pouring it. It's not something they're just slapping out. So Dragon Scale by Juma is a really cool one. I like that. Somehow they get this scale pattern in this block, and they make it in blue, pink, red, yellow, and it's got snake scale pattern to it. And as you work with it and sand it down, it stays all through it. And
nice.
There's some kind of magic in this thing, because how do you make a 1-inch cube with a scale pattern that's poured somehow through it? Yeah, it's really, I need to see how they do it. It's crazy stuff. I've been using that a lot for dragons. one right now that's Year of the Snake, and that's kind of cool. That's a cool material. And I like Red Abalone Heart. That's one of my favorites, but it's real busy, and I don't use it very often.
Yep. Is the Curanite, is that made in the United States or is that somewhere else,
I
like
believe
Italy or
it's made in the
something?
U.S., but I never looked at it. I source it and get it from the U.S. I don't know where it's made. I don't know who makes
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Fahrenheit.com, you can see it yourself.
Cool. Very cool. And I noticed, let's talk a little bit about tooling. You're using a jeweler's saw, like kind of like a fret saw
That's it.
almost
I'm using a drawer
for
saw,
cutting.
and I was using 3/0 blades when I started because, as you learn, if you buy Larry Robinson, who's with the Grandmaster, he has a video series and a book series. And if you buy his stuff, he goes on about how he's using 3/0 all the time, 03. So you tend to do what your mentor does. So I started with 03, but I've just found lately that unless I have to, I prefer 04. And the reason why is it matches your line almost perfectly. My line, right? It matches the width of the line, so it makes things tighter as you cut. But even more importantly, when you're cutting really fast, if it snaps and it's a 3, it's going to fly into your hand. If it snaps and it's a 4, it's going to snap. The force of cutting an 03 versus an 04, a 4/0 versus a 3/0 is actually so different that when it breaks, it reacts differently. I've never cut myself or cut through my finger using a 4/0, and I've sliced myself a billion times with 3/0s, and it's just different enough that it's like I'm never using threes again. I'll just waste more fours because they
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
all the time. Yeah, but
Yeah.
they're way more flexible. A 3 is much more stiff, and it's much more dangerous in my opinion. You're cutting up and down, and you're moving forward because sometimes the pearl snaps open. Sometimes the pearl piece will just break away because it's not dense in certain spots. Sometimes the blade snaps, and you just literally force the thing right in your hand. And not as a beginner, because beginners tend to cut slow. But I've been doing this 25 years. I cut relatively quick where I can. I can see areas. It's like driving down a road. Oh, you see it's open and clear. You just go. You see this turn coming. You slow down. So yeah, it's 3/0. I've had this finger cut so many times right here from a 3/0 going right into it. Holding things down, this finger gets cut nonstop. It still looks okay. But it's at least 20, 30 times, at least. And with fours,
Yeah.
it's almost
Yeah.
never. It's that big of a difference. It's really, and it's nice. It's a little more flexible with an 04, but they still don't break that fast. They still cut really well. Then if you get more, you go to an 05, 06. Depends on the piece.
Yeah. Cool. Well, fascinating stuff. I love your niche. What a great niche to be in. I think it's so cool. Do you feel like, one of my last questions for you, I feel like I'm seeing more and more inlaid guitars lately. Am I just coming across more, or do you think that there are more out there, or what's that all about?
I think the way guitars have been created has shifted considerably, and it's not me thinking this; it's a known fact. It used to be, well, you were going to get a guitar. Well, you have to get it from a guitar luthier back in the day. There wasn't a company. Then companies came around, and they're making guitars with this inlay or that inlay or a special run of this inlay. Then came CNC, and all of a sudden, somebody with some talent who has the ability and the time to learn CNC that wants to build guitars is building them in their shop. And some of them are building guitars, they don't care about inlay, and some are building them really well, and they love inlay. And they say to themselves, well, I could build 30 guitars, CNC, in my shop a year, or I could build 15 with complicated inlay, because that eats up half my time. And you're seeing those guys. So you're seeing all these crazy inlaid CNC things, for the most part, at trade shows and stuff like that, because no longer do you need to be a company to produce that kind of work. You can be an individual guy and do it on your own. All you need is a little CNC machine in your garage and the will to do it, and you can do it. And you can do it very well. And they look good. They look okay. I don't usually fawn over them as I do other high-end hand inlay artists because, and it's not an ego thing. It's not hand is better. It's not better. CNC is incredibly tight. It's incredibly good. The one mistake that a lot of people do, and it's not with art level CNC. It's with just regular CNC, is they make things so tight that if the wood or the humidity changes in the room, it just pops right out. I've repaired so many CNC blocks going into guitars, things where it's just, everybody shoots for it's got to be so perfectly tight, and it doesn't. It needs to be well done, tight, so that if there's a little wiggle room, you know. But yeah, you're seeing mainly, I believe, really talented people alone, single guys, maybe 2 or 3 guys in a shop, coming up with ideas and doing runs of it. And that's what never existed before the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Well, Craig, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate your time.
No problem.
I'll be sure to link to your page below. I'll have some pictures as well because your work is just beautiful. I want everybody to see it. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Yep. Well, any other questions? I'm sitting here
Good. Thank
with
you.
a bowl because you asked me to show a bowl.
Oh yeah, let's check that out.
At the beginning, you said, "Hey, do you have a piece to show me?" So I'm sitting here on my lap, fidgeting with this thing the whole time. This is
Sorry, Craig.
no, that's okay. This is a
Yeah,
Harvey Reams
super
cutting
cool.
board. It's a gorgeous cutting board my friend Harvey makes. Harvey Reams. He's on Instagram. These go all the way through, and I buy them now and then just to have fun with. So, and what you're looking at here is
Yeah.
you're looking at mother of pearl. You're looking at turquoise. You're looking at turquoise in the feathers, gold pearl dots, white pearl. This is a recon stone called lightning stone with little gold going through it. These are solid gold wire. The actual dots here. That's 14 karat gold on both sides.
Yep.
The eyes are engraved. All the details are engraved, and the feathers are engraved. Right. This is actually a one-piece feather.
Yeah.
It looks like 2, but it's not. I just drew that line there, and the color tends to shift. The one down here is actually a 2-piece feather.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's so cool. I can't imagine the intricacy involved in getting that to fit perfectly. I don't think I'm anywhere near patient enough.
Once you learn how to do it, and once you've done it forever, like I've done it, it's you know it's the only way you can do it anymore. I think the one thing I've been chasing,
Uh,
is
yeah.
better routing more than cutting. Cutting goes together pretty quick. Routing, it takes a little more effort. You know, making everything fit perfectly in lighter wood.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. That's the hard part.
Yeah. I do have another question. Are there any great books that you recommend people checking out who are interested in this?
Yeah, Larry Robinson is pretty much the grandmaster. He has a whole series, and he had a video series at one time, and he has a DVD series, and now he probably has a download series. So I recommend starting with that.
Yeah.
You can watch the length of the thing, you know, I did with Stuart McDonald. But if you want really, really, really incredibly thorough on how to do it, go with Larry's product because he's
Yeah. I don't want to give you any more competition, but I think you've got a little bit of a head start on anybody starting right now.
maybe. You know, there's a lot of talent out there. It's art. That's what's cool about it. It's even if someone is amazing, you're going to like someone's style more than someone else's. No one's producing at the art level the same stuff. You know, I intentionally don't do things like other people because that's them. And you know, even if I wanted to do an homage to them or something like that, which every piece I do is an homage to someone I learned from. But you know, I tend to do marine life, and that broke down, and then I started doing people and humans and all kinds of other stuff. And now I can do whatever people want me to do. Humans is the scariest thing. You do my wife's face. Well, that's really hard. You can screw that. Yeah, if you screw that up, you're going to you see your wife's face every day, right? So you can't mess that up. You can't mess up the eyes. Everything has got to be perfect. So I've had times sitting in the shop till 3 a.m. just drawing over and over to get it right, you know, to make it that person that they know. So that the hardest thing.
Yeah, that's funny you say that. It's like seeing a statue of somebody. You're like, that doesn't look like that person.
Exactly. And everyone knows it. And some people might go, "Oh no, it's fine, it's good enough," but it's not good enough. It's got to be right.
Right.
Or every time you open up that case and take out that instrument or whatever thing you have it on, you're going to see that it wasn't right. And I can't live with that, and the client can't live with it either. That's the hard part of the job. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I got a ton of questions for you. What's the most unique commission you've ever done?
I've done
What's the one that
urns
stands
with
out?
ashes in them before. I've done urns with ashes for people that have passed away. That was unique, and that's interesting. I've done like 4 of those actually. I did a fishing rod once for myself. That's kind of cool. Just because I had time and I wanted to do it. I did a Rolls Royce car from the 1940s that went to the Tour d'Elegance car show and won Most Elegant. That was cool. There's a chop shop down in Miami.
Like you did it on the car?
It's in the doors. The door panels were inlaid. and they needed it recreated to what this woodworker who built this car after World War II or during World War II. They found the bombed out frame of this car in France, and they reconstructed it to go to the show. So I did a Rolls Royce car panel doors. That was neat. I never saw the finished car. I know there's a video of it somewhere, and I know that it won, and that's cool. And I guess that's the car. Yeah, that's and a bunch of guitars, a bunch of ukuleles, and a bunch of all kinds of fun stuff. And
So, what percentage of your work is guitars? About 80%, sound like?
these days less. I'm getting almost mainly ukes right now. And I
Wow.
it's just that guitars are all being done CNC in house by a lot of companies, and that's fine. But Kanilea, they have a thing. They really want to keep their tradition alive, and the tradition is hand, and that's how they do their highest end stuff. They do it hand. So as an artist, you have to appreciate that they appreciate that. So that keeps you in business. The day that everybody decides, you know what, we don't care how high quality is CNC, you're done. You got to appreciate it being done by hand.
Yeah, and I love that. That's great that they do that.
Yeah. Yeah, otherwise I wouldn't be here
My
talking.
guitar shop. What's that?
I said, otherwise I wouldn't be here talking about it. If you're doing something,
Yeah.
I have to do something else. You need people to want it by hand, or you're done.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
My local guitar shop carries that brand of ukuleles. I'll go down and check them out, see if I see any of your work there.
You probably won't. You're probably not going to see my work.
Okay.
Over at the custom shop. Yeah, and a lot of them they auction off the high end, and you'll see it online, or you'll see it behind me.
Yeah.
But you're not going to find my stuff in a shop because every piece I do, thankfully, has sold to collectors.
Yeah, right.
So every time I do one with them, it's gone already. Yeah, or they're custom commissioned. I'm in the middle of one right now, and it's pre-sold. So,
Yeah,
But definitely
that
check
makes a
them out.
lot of sense, and that's the way to work anyway.
You have to. I do stuff like this when there's a gap, and it's what am I going to do? If there is a gap, and usually there's not more. If I'm so fast at getting them done that the gap doesn't mean a month. The gap means 2 or 3 days. I do this in 2 days. Yeah, and then I'm getting the piece. I can have a piece shipped, and I can finish something like this before it gets here within a week. Because I'm really fast at it. Yeah, and that keeps you moving. So I do a lot of gap pieces. I was doing gap guitars at one point, or you do it after you're done while you're your work stuff. But the guitar industry is a little slow right now. And people are doing it in homes.
Yeah.
Still plenty to do. There's still plenty of work.
Yeah.
I have a ton of work coming in, and just has to get here. So that's your gap. You're waiting on pieces to be shipped. People at the companies are deciding what kind of wood, what kind of top, what kind of this, what kind of that. They know they want the inlay. The inlay's drawn up, and now it's a matter of just putting it all together to make their custom piece, and it all eventually just turns on. So that's when you do stuff like this, the board. That's when you do jewelry pieces. I do stuff for people to wear, all kinds of stuff. I did a handbag. That's kind of cool with a girl.
Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah, I did with a Hello Kitty piece. That was cool.
Nice. Yeah. I know. I really enjoy following your page, seeing all the things you do. I've learned a ton talking to you and watching your videos. So thank you so much for your time, and thanks for joining the club.
Okay, no problem. Thanks for going a little bit over with me. I got more than I have to say. So. I look
Yeah, a
forward
little
to
bit of a false ending, but
That's right.
it's so interesting. I could talk about it all day.
It's funny for just
Thanks so much, Craig.
holes. There's a lot to do. All right, thanks again.
All right, man. Take care. Bye-bye.